Hello guys and welcome to another video, and in this one I'll explain what is brake and balance and how to properly use it. The first thing that I would like to go through is what type of car are you driving. So if it's an FR car, FF car or an MR car, there are some differences, and I'll later in the video explain how much you can gain an advantage and what does it actually mean. So first of all, FR cars, that means that the engine is at the front of the car and most of the weight is also at the front where the engine is located, and the power goes to the rear of the car. So all of the power that you're putting in is going to the rear tires. Now we got MR cars, which means that the engine is in the middle of the car, which means kind of is in the middle, but most of it's at the rear, and the distribution of the power is all at the rear wheels. You have to be quite careful with these cars because they're quite snappy. I would say the complete opposite is FF cars. FF cars are very stable, the engine is at the front and all of the power goes to the front wheels, which means these cars are difficult to turn, but they are very stable. So in the next couple of examples I'll show you how you can utilize properly the braking balance and how you can gain an advantage. So let's begin. I would like to begin this one with this McLaren 650S while running brake and balance -5. You will see the real effect of understeer and why am I using this car. So this car is a little bit snappy, so here -5 will make it as stable as possible while running in this downhill section at Mount Panorama. This can be quite a tricky section of the circuit and there is a huge possibility of losing the back end. You will see that the car is very stable at this point, but it's just not getting that rotation. I missed the apex of this corner right now. In the end, the time was a little bit better than my previous time that I've set, but it just wasn't optimal. Now we will just go into the other opposite, I would say +5, which isn't really the thing that you want to do with this car, never ever. I guess as you're going downhill it becomes even worse. The car was kind of okay, I expected it to be even worse than it was, but I was really careful in this situation, and you can see that at this point I almost lost the car. I kind of catched it, but here you can see the real effects of that unwanted oversteer at this point. So as I'm going to this section, the car is really losing the back end. I'm controlling it, but now it got just about enough oversteer and it just about enough rotation, and I was able to actually improve my time. So in this case the car is better, but at the same time it's really tricky to drive. So what I found out of this one was that okay, maybe a little bit to the plus or 0 might be the best thing to do. So here is the example when I'm using brake and balance at 0. This seems to be the best, I would say the best possible combination and the best thing to do. So downhill section, the car has enough stopping power and it also has enough rotation, so it's kind of perfect at 0. Maybe I should have done it a little bit better, but I guess like +1 could have resulted in unwanted oversteer and too much rotation, especially as I'm going downhill. So here it was better, and as you can see this is the real effect of braking bias. So if I put it to minus, it would cause a lot of unwanted understeer. +5 means a lot of unwanted oversteer. So here you can see that I even set the fastest, among the fastest times in the world on this circuit, so it's P6 at this point on this specific sector. So now we are going into the FR car section, and here I'm using -5. You'll see the real effects of -5 while running FR cars. As I previously explained, these cars are becoming almost impossible to control and almost impossible to turn with while using -5. But in the end somehow I managed to get a pretty decent run with -5, and I think this is a reasonable time set with -5, and it really shows the difference between, let's see, -5 and +5. So you can see the car is really understeering. I'm not able to catch the apex. The exit was really good, I would say. I was able to get on the power, but I was constantly struggling. The car became really stable, but also very understeering, and it just couldn't turn. And as you can see here on the way out, this is also a very oversteering car, so you have to be careful on the way out. So it was a 29.6, I would say a reasonably decent time. But now as I'm going to +5, the car should become better when it comes to turning, and it actually was, but it was maybe too good. So the car was getting too much rotation in the middle of the corner, and it was just about too much. It was still better than -5, was far better than -5, but I was getting too much rotation. Let's say when I was turning into the turn and when I was trail braking, and it was kind of not really benefiting that much. I actually started to lose a bit of time just because of that unwanted oversteer. So here we got a 29.565. It was about a tenth faster than with -5. So I guess if you put everything together right, and I think I tried -5 +5, and then in the end it was about 0 and +2. So this is a perfect example in how much more speed you can get with, let's say, +2. So the sectors became really stable, but at the same time I got rotation out of the corner. So the car was really good throughout the corner, and I was able to carry the speed while still maintaining all of that really nice lines, and eventually getting on the power as early as possible. So here, I mean, I had a little snap of oversteer, but I was able to catch it, and it was 5.42. So my last corner wasn't really the best, so that's why I lost a bit of time, but this is the real effect of using +2 with this car, and using it just about right. But now, as we're going into the FF car section, I just wanted to highlight that this car is not supposed to be driven at -5, and you can really see the reason why. So back at the back, it's my Ghost. It's the previous best time that I set on this track, and it was actually a while ago. But now I can see that how much more understeer that I'm getting out of this corner. So I was actually able to catch this one pretty good, but later you will see the real deficit of this car. So -5 is just not getting enough rotation. This car just does not have the power to get around the corner. So it's very stable, but at the same time quite understeery. So my recommendation is always, like absolutely always, use this car at +5. You could probably use it at +3, but I think +5 is the best possible option. You can see the real reason why. So I'm getting so much more rotation out of this corner. I even made a mistake here, but it was still good enough to get me in, let's say, a leading position, and I was actually improving my lap time. So here, as I'm going downhill, it's kind of, let's say, even more obvious in how much more rotation this car is getting. I was slightly too early on the power, but it was still good enough to gain me an advantage. And I also think this is a reasonable amount of time that you can expect to get with brake-in bias. So you cannot expect half a second, you can possibly expect maybe a tenth and a half, maybe even less. But now I got this Lamborghini, and it's one of the most understeery cars in MR class. Here, different cars mean different approach, and also different corners mean different approach. Here, it was quite understeer because I used -5, so I was kind of compensating by putting the power down too soon, and the car just snapped. Here, I'm using 0, which means the car will become harder on the braking, it will be hard to manage, but at the same time it will make the corner a lot faster. So I had to manage the corners, and also had to manage the car. And Catalunya means more rotation, we just need more rotation, and that's why I'm using brake and balance at 0. -5 just wasn't good enough, I was not getting that much rotation, and here you can see that we pretty much 90% of the time we got fast turns. And these are not sharp turns, so you have to use more rotation to get faster to the corners. So let's say a complete opposite would be the Monza. I'll explain why, and you know how it's actually making that effect. Here we need to be able to carry the speed throughout this middle section, and of course these fast corners. But in this case, I'm using -5 at Monza, which can be quite okay, but you need to brake in the straight line, and you need to really adjust the car accordingly. So here, -5 was good enough to put all of the braking force to the front of the car and actually stop the car a little bit better. But here, I was, let's say, a bit struggling on the way out, and this car became a little too understeery. So that's why I thought, okay, maybe I need to change something, and that's exactly what I did. So I adjusted accordingly to a turn. So this is a heavy braking point. I would usually suggest running -5, -3, but in this case, and with this car, I found the right thing to do, and it was +1. So here, I guess you can use 0 to rotate the car a little bit better, because it's a pretty much a straight braking point, and there's like this section. So here, you just need the rotation, and it was slightly better than -5. The car felt just about right, and I was able to get through the corner a little bit faster than I did in my previous attempt. And I would like to conclude this video, so I made these general guidelines. So these are not exactly the things that you need to follow, these are just general guidelines, so they should be a little bit off depending on the car, depending on the circuit, depending on the type of corner you are entering. But in general, FR cars are quite understeery, so you need to use brake and balance to about +2, +3. If you use the minus, this car becomes so understeery that it's almost impossible to turn. While MR cars are really difficult to control if you use it to plus, that's why you need to be able to kind of generate all of that feedback and all of that, let's say, rotation in between -2 and let's say 0. I think the best way to properly use these cars are about -1, -2. 0, you can extract a lot of, I would say a lot of time, but this is quite risky, especially on the downhill sections. If you're going downhill, the car will also try to follow. So in general, these cars do not like heavy braking points and do not like trail braking. So try to avoid that while you're using these guidelines. And on top of that, I think everything is FF cars. These are quite simple. They are quite understeery, let's be honest, but they are the easiest to control. And it's really simple. Always use it to +5, otherwise the car just won't be able to turn. And yes, I made some additional guidelines, and you really need to be careful about the stability of the car and the weight distribution. Not every car is the same. Not every FR car is the same. Not every MR car is the same. So you need to adjust accordingly. And also, I think one of the most important things out of all of this is uneven tire wear. So this is something that you need to change in the race, especially in the race. In the qualifying, you can do whatever you want. It's pretty much not going to affect the tires that much, but in longer races, or let's say your tires are at about, let's say 30% of the wear on the fronts and 70% on the rears, you need to save those rears. You need to put all of that brake and bias to minus, so all the way to -5 to kind of save the rear tires and eventually or potentially save you from spinning out. So guys, I hope this was helpful, and if it was, please hit the like button, or you might even want to subscribe to the channel. So guys, until the next time, bye.